So I wanted to check out the 2000 film by director Christian Petzold, Yella. This film stars Nina Hoss and... Well, I've just spoiled myself for this movie reading the intro, so I'm not going to go into that. This movie is directed by German director Christian Petzold and stars Nina Hoss. Christian Petzold is one of my favorite directors of the 21st century, and Nina Hoss, I think, is one of the finest actors of our generation. Nina Hoss and Christian Petzold used to form a director-muse relationship, a partnership. And yeah, I just think it's a really fruitful relationship that the two had. I'm sad to see that they've gone their mutual ways, but I'm sure it's for good reasons, probably. And so yeah, I wanted to check out their older work. So let's do that then. And before we get started, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films. Yeah, I read the first sentence on Wikipedia about this, and it has spoiled the entire movie for me. But let's just try and organically integrate that knowledge into this viewing, I guess. God damn it. Don't read the first two sentences of the Wikipedia article. And if you know what this film is an interpretation of, I'm sure this intro will make a lot of sense to you. I think as a director, I could say something that Petzold is interested in is definitely modes of transportation, and transportation as a metaphor for, let's say, escape or liberation. And this is Nina Hoss, a consummate tall girl actress. Oh, that's beautiful with the pollen.
Okay.
I wonder if that was something that's in the predecessor to this movie. It seems like it would be a little bit.
Du hast einen Job. Einen guten, einen richtig guten.
She has a new job in a different place, a different area, something like the predecessor to this movie.
Fußgänger bitte andere Straßenseite benutzen. Steht da.
So I guess I'll have to walk next to you.
Verstehst doch,
Oh, dudes suck.
dass ich jetzt mal rüberkommen muss, oder?
If you ever get your hands on a Petzold movie to watch, just know, as an intro, that they have very interesting relationships in
Stendal, weißt du
them.
noch?
They very powerfully capture dynamics of abuse and suffering, claustrophobia.
Yella, ich vermisse dich so.
Kannst jetzt wieder rübergehen, die Baustelle ist vorbei.
Yeah, I'd say if there's one thing I would say about Petzold's movies, well, I'd say a couple of things, but they have incredibly deep relationships in them, incredibly powerful couples, dynamics, relationships, antagonisms, people abusing or neglecting the ones closest to them, and perhaps showing grace or charity to complete strangers.
Ist ja auch nicht weit, nur 2 Stunden.
Yeah, along the lines of transportation, I'd say a huge idea or theme in Petzold's movies is mobility, freedom, access, the ability for characters to move about and be unrestricted, and the kind of characteristics they undertake when they are restricted or when they're oppressed or when they're boxed in.
Ist für dich.
Das brauche ich nicht, Papa. Ich verdiene doch. Das Taxi.
They cut just before it, but you don't necessarily see whether or not he's put the money in her
Yella?
coat.
Herr Fichte? Darf ich dich zum Bahnhof fahren?
And because I know what this movie is referencing, it's very kind of pointed the way that there's a very pointed way that Philippe is dressed, very formally.
Das ist nicht der Weg zum Bahnhof, Ben.
Kleiner sentimentaler Umweg. Was haben wir eigentlich für die Buchhaltungssoftware bezahlt? Das Netzwerk, die Computer. Waren das 70 oder 80.000? Kannst du dich noch erinnern? Gestern haben sie es taxiert. 2.000. Das Zeug ist nicht mal ein Jahr alt. Hier, schau es dir mal an. 25.000 brauche ich.
I love this way that that Philip talks in all these numbers and all these calculations, that he's calculated everything and he's estimated everything. It's a very kind of controlled mask that he's put on, the mask of rationality, of logistics.
Schau's dir doch mal an. Schau's dir doch mal an!
Yeah. Cool.
Ich will, dass du bei mir bleibst. Und alles wird so wie früher werden. Hm? Alles wird wieder gut.
This is a huge, huge crisis in Christian Petzold movies. Not necessarily signing good or bad to one side or the other, but the crisis of those who want to preserve the status quo and those who want to move on. The degree to which people will fight to try and keep things the same way, even if the same way is killing them.
Ich möchte aussteigen, Ben.
Tut mir leid. Ich liebe dich, Yella.
Oh, they actually removed a part of the fence where they crashed. I want to suggest as an idea, if you know what film this is referencing or that this film has taken its influence from, don't say so explicitly in the comments down below, or if you have a guess of what it is. But if you know the film, if you've seen it, talk about the relationship you see between this and that film without saying outright what the movie is. And it's a very interesting detail. Depending on whether or not you know what this will be about, that the first shot of them, the wide shot of them, of the bridge and the car being sunk, you hear the sounds of Yella surfacing, but then it cuts to another shot of her actually reaching the surface. I love the sound of the raven, or the crow, or the bird, signifying a lot of things, but also signifying the kind of albatross that Philip is to Yella, that he'll always hang on her shoulder, that she can't escape him. In comparison to the Petzold that I know and love, the Petzold that will grow and develop, obviously this is a little bit more formulaic, this falls more into convention. If you watch this movie, he'll seem like a lot of other filmmakers with not much to distinguish, but it is cool. The little seeds of things that will become more apparent as his career develops. His fascination with silence, certainly, being one of them. Somehow she catches that train. And we get a repeat of the first image of the film of her undressing on a train. I love the suggestion of that, the kind of small terror of it. I wouldn't exactly say that Petzold movies are specifically interested in surveillance exactly, but they all have somewhat of a paranoid veneer to them. There's an internal fear, and part of that fear is manifested in being observed. And part of that fear is not seeing someone who could see you. Again, we get this kind of modulated auditory landscape of Petzold's movies, with the cue of the crow again. The way that the auditory world has been manipulated into silence, like a disassociative event. I wonder if Yella's red chemise will come into play in terms of the color story of this movie. If people will wear more muted colors in comparison to her singular red shirt.
Sie haben aber keine Vorauszahlung geleistet.
Das hatten Sie aber nicht verlangt.
Ich habe es nicht verlangt. Der Kollege hat einen Fehler gemacht.
I'm gonna pause for a second. Okay, this is really interesting. I'm not really sure this is a direct thing that's being employed intentionally, but it doesn't seem like it would work with the way that this room is built or furnished. But the way that they're mic'd right now, and recorded, it has a little bit of an echo to it. It sounds like they're in a really large, vast room. There's just a bit of an echo to what they're saying, and it doesn't necessarily quite reflect the room that they're in. So I'm wondering if this is just a technical error, if they didn't quite have the right setup to record properly so that it wouldn't have the echo, or if this is something intentional. Because I'm not sure this would be created by the size of the room that they're in, but it sounds like, in terms of the audio story, that they're in a larger room than is being depicted right now. You hear how loud the card sounds against the table, but it doesn't sound like what a hotel room would sound, or a hotel entry would sound like.
Bis bald, Papa. Ruf mich an.
Oh, just beautiful. I love when directors shoot a profile. It's so vivid. Nothing better, really. Water is also an idea or a motif expressed in Undine, definitely, and to a certain degree also Barbara, and I guess Transit, but specifically Undine. I mean, you'd get it from the title.
Es tut mir leid. Wo fangen Sie denn an?
Airbus.
Schmidt-Ott?
Sorry, that wasn't Philip. The earlier guy was Ben, not Philip.
Yella? Yella, kannst du mir schnell mal ein paar Unterlagen aus meinem Büro holen? Im Schreibtisch, oben links.
Is she gonna be able to get it? Super obvious detail. Don't listen to me if you don't want to spoil this. Schmidt-Ott isn't even there. Yeah, similarly to the shot of her emerging from the river, from the bank, there are scenes of expectation that are being like slightly subverted, or like shot in an unnatural way from our expectations. We expect to see Schmidt-Ott in the parking lot, and there's just a second of him not being there, and we have to reframe, recontextualize to see where he actually is.
Kann ich jetzt die Mappe haben? Da war wohl jemand schneller. Nein, dich meine ich nicht. Hast du schon mal um 11 Uhr morgens Austern gegessen? Wo kann man denn hier jetzt Austern kriegen?
It's a very interesting way of kind of revealing information. Not displaying his hand on her wrist until the moment of separation. And we have another instance, an interesting kind of another parallel to an earlier scene, like with her taking off her clothes on the train two different times. We have an instance where she was made to feel uncomfortable in a car, and there was an earlier instance where she decided not to do anything about it, and here she's chosen the other way. In a kind of mirroring of the previous scene, she's kind of learned her lesson. She immediately gets out of the car. In subtle ways, the movie is playing around a lot with kind of like movie logic or dream logic. Like Philip walking up to Yella's room, something that becomes a lot more prominent in his later career. This kind of dream logic is definitely something that's in the DNA of Transit and of Undine.
Ich bräuchte jemanden, der mich bei einer Verhandlung begleitet, der sich mit Bilanzen auskennt. Die Serienreife. Und für die Serienproduktion brauchen Sie Geld.
Wie viel brauchen die denn?
850.000. Anteile.
Another parallel or mirrored scene, her studying like account books in a car like she did earlier with Ben. Well, she didn't like read the books there, but a similar conversation, but under different circumstances.
Kennen Sie das Broker-Posing? So junge Anwälte in beschissenen Grisham-Filmen?
Oh.
Ich mag es eigentlich nicht so in Verhandlungen da zu sitzen, aber dem Anwalt von hinten ein Zettelchen gereicht wird und er daraufhin mit jemandem flüstert. Alle wollen wissen, was auf dem Zettelchen steht.
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of convention that this movie is pointing out, because I do wonder if this movie is playing with ideas of movie conventions, things that we stereotypically see in movies that we kind of read as normal behavior only because they've been codified in films. But if you did them in real life, or if you did them under different circumstances, they would look artificial. So something that I'm interested in seeing whether or not this film pursues is like artificial actions that favor, that curry to a kind of dream or movie logic, as opposed to natural logic.
Pierre hat auch die Idee, die 608 Reihe nachträglich bestücken zu lassen. Das wären dann nochmal 9000 Stück. Pierre so ein Bar abgemacht, dass wir zuerst die 3 Wagen bestücken für die ersten Rennen und dann im September schauen, dass in die neue 609-Serie, wie hoch der Umsatz sein müsste, um Break-Even zu erreichen. Mit dem will ich
I love the soundscape of that. You can actually hear, and they're choosing to shoot in rooms that would reflect this, but they've amplified all these sort of like distant and echoey and kind of empty sounds.
Frau Fichte?
Für Netzwerk und Software und so weiter sind hier 80.000 Euro veranschlagt. Dafür bekommen Sie keine 2.000 mehr.
Yeah, that's the conversation that she had with Ben earlier.
Herr Dr. Fritz, diese 80.000, die das Netzwerk gekostet haben, sollen nicht in Ihren Abschreibungen auftauchen. Die Solve Group spezialisiert auf den Verkauf insolventer Betriebe. Haben Sie da das Netzwerk her? Wie viel würden Sie bekommen?
Was Frau Fichte sagen möchte, es geht nicht um Sicherheiten und Kredite, es geht um Perspektiven. Und ich denke, da sollten wir jetzt weiterarbeiten.
Yeah, I think I'd say this is something that's a particular fascination of Petzold's in the movies of his that I've seen, is the sounds of empty rooms. He really loves that. Specific things you hear in the foreground, in the periphery, in empty, cavernous rooms. Or not even cavernous, small rooms that are empty. This is actually a really interesting, like, kind of point of comparison to Undine. I think Undine explores a lot of similar ideas or atmospheric beats as Yella. It's interesting to see the ways Petzold is transformed between these two pieces. And again, the sound, the like supersonic sound.
Sie haben zugehört. Sie haben so getan, als ob Sie auf dem Monitor irgendwas lesen würden, aber wenn man liest, dann bewegen sich die Augen. Ihre Augen haben sich nicht bewegt.
Look how much eye you get out of Nina Haas out of that profile. I don't usually like want to like highlight certain physical attributes to actors because that's like that's outside of their power and outside of anybody else's, but her eyes are luminous in a way that even from a side profile view, even almost like past the 90-degree mark, you can actually read so much like expression and ideas in her eyes.
In dem Umschlag hier sind 75.000. Können Sie das für mich machen?
Entschuldigung, das sind 25.000 zu viel.
nichts, Yella. Ich habe Ihnen vorhin 25.000 zu viel gegeben.
Da ist es.
Weird purity tests. Weird.
Wer ist das?
Und von ihm. Und ich wollte weg und er...
Was erzählen Sie mir da?
Ich möchte Ihnen
Das
das
interessiert mich
erklären.
nicht.
Er läuft mir
interessiert
hinterher
mich
und
nicht.
ich dachte...
Ich habe gesagt, es interessiert mich nicht!
You can tell when a director's into an actress when they just have a scene of them putting on shoes. I'm not going to try and explain it or justify it, but it's just true. They're into it. I'm not saying I'm into it, but I can read a fetish or a fixation when I see it.
Warum wollten Sie das Geld anonym schicken?
Er läuft mir hinterher.
Ach, Sie meinen, wenn er das Geld hat, dann kümmert er sich um die Firma, statt Sie zu verfolgen?
Something like that, I suppose.
Und Sie meinen, das hätte funktioniert?
Who knows what'll ever work with another human's heart? It's a weird thing for me to say. It's just like, just in Petzold movies, characters put in extreme circumstances with each other, and not necessarily extreme in terms of like actions within a movie extreme, but extreme in terms of proximity, anxiety, it's just suffocation. Again with the envelope. So I guess like they're making like the different companies that they work with are setting up sweet deals with Philip to like give him bribes to pass along their offers or their proposals to his employer, knowing that they're toxic. Which I guess I don't really understand, because wouldn't his like company, I don't know, check the books and stuff, see that he's making bad deals?
Papa? Mir geht's gut.
Habt ihr schon gefickt?
You can actually hear the room tone increasing in volume.
Habt ihr schon gefickt? Entschuldige.
It's really nice. But also the way that they reveal Ben, it's normal to like a thriller or a drama film, but it's also continuing this idea of information or characters that are hidden in periphery, that the way that the film chooses to frame action or chooses to frame circumstances intentionally blocks things in the periphery of the frame.
Geh jetzt, Ben, bitte.
Nein, wir müssen beide gehen, Yella.
Blocks out. Jesus. This is, in so many ways, an imperfect Petzold film, but already his hold on relationships and the intensity of relationships is so sharp.
Tut mir leid.
I love the way that characters interact with each other in Petzold films, because it's not just love or lust or anything. Relationships are formed on the brink, out of despair, out of desperation, and it's not everyday relationships, but it is a very real dynamic that I can really identify with. And another mirroring, she's taking a detour in the same way Ben took a detour on their first encounter, their second encounter.
Wo sind wir denn hier?
Wir sind gleich in Wittenberge.
Oh, wow.
Einfach nur mal mein...
Halt an!
I love these weird reflections, the same scenes being played out over and over again. These ways that like limits or confidence is tested or breached. She thinks she's justified, and she's also doing the same thing to Philip that Ben did to her. There's just these different like dynamics and reflections kind of interweaving with each other. It's all kind of jumbling in on itself. Is Philip Ben? Is Philip her father? Is Philip someone else completely? Where's the crow or the raven? God, her eyes are beautiful. Oh, and I didn't even recognize this. Philip is dressed the same way as Ben as well.
Wofür klaust du das Geld?
An der Firma bin ich dran, die interessiert mich. Schau dir das mal an.
Part of me is like, I do like the like boring day-to-day stuff that like Petzold is sometimes interested in, but sometimes it like reaches that level of like boring and day-to-day where I'm like, Chris, you fucking nerd, why the fuck did you put all these numbers and accounts and fucking like Quicken books in your movie?
Die Amerikaner, deren Patent möglicherweise umgangen wird.
She just has a really powerful profile. Petzold makes a whole meal out of Nina Hoss's profile. Look at that. She just, I don't know if it's a strength of this film or a particular blessing that they found, a construction of it, but with an actor with like a different face or different talents, shooting so much of this movie on their profile would be a severe hindrance. But Nina Hoss really, really shines through it. It's really serendipity that they found an actress who actually manages to like evoke a performance in this way that they've been restricted into shooting her. Or maybe they planned to shoot her like this all along, but really, it's kind of surprising. It makes me feel like he and Hoss perhaps developed their relationship a little bit more before this movie, and he knew which particular ways in which to shoot her to present her strengths. Like, some directors just know how to shoot an actress in a way that other directors will never know. Petzold and Hoss just, like, understand each other. Like, Siama and Adele Hanel understand each other, or that, Demi and Deneuve, or Ford and Dwayne. Because, I mean, like, he doesn't really shoot her this way in his other movies. I'm not sure about Jericho, but from what I remember, at least, like, the most memorable or striking shots, that's a beautiful shot, most striking shots of Barbara or of Phoenix, I don't conceptualize her being shot this way. Look how tall she is. That's what I'm talking about. That's some tall girl acting.
Ich möchte noch eine Sache mit Ihnen besprechen.
I love how so many figures in this movie have been out of focus. But the way that like Banks or that the hotel has been filmed, there's been a lot of characters like in periphery.
Wenn die Amerikaner erfahren, dass Ihr Patent geschlagen werden könnte, dann haben Sie gar nichts mehr.
Wie viel wollen Sie?
200.000.
It's interesting. Is she trying to get the 200,000 for Philip or for Ben? It's another one of those things where characters have kind of like replicated or manifested as like a doppelganger of each other. Like, which relationship is she serving? Or is it all kind of like the same kind of dynamic?
Die werden hier langsam unruhig. Ja, verbinden Sie mich bitte nochmal mit seinem Handy. Gib mir die Mailbox an. Nehmen bitte mal Frau Kundenmauer.
See, this is one of those things, again, to speak of like movie tropes and like movie logic. You think, is this something that would be at all possible within this sphere? And as soon as it happens, you're made to question if it's actually reality with something that's even more surreal, even more out of the bounds of reality. And the again, comparing this to Undine, the specter, the drowned specter is something that emerges in Undine as well. I think the two movies are more in conversation with each other than I kind of understood at first. I mean, your first mistake was that you should have changed your blouse. I love the way that Philippe just keeps on appearing in like these non-logical ways. I love how understated it is. It's just so strange. Who has she been making love to? Has it been a man? Has it been her recreating her dynamic with Ben? Has she been making love to something else?
Ich liebe dich, Yella.
Everything, everything. And we see the same shot, but without the sounds of her emerging. I love that the swimmers, the frogmen, recover their body in the way that they first emerged from the scene. That makes so much sense. I love that detail. That's also something that'll come back up again in Undine. I didn't realize he was just remaking Yella when he did Undine. That's hilarious. No sound of the raven. Yeah. The episode has ended. Nope. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm sure you've caught on by now if you know the film. But keep it secret, keep it safe. I wouldn't say this was as ethereal, as unique as its antecedent, as the film that it's taking inspiration from, but that's like a particularly singular and influential film. So one would have no right to anticipate that this would be like a more striking, a more singular adaptation. But yeah, I guess on the negative side of things, to get that out of the way, this is like incredibly prosaic, and it's like interested in granular stuff and fucking Quicken books and fucking accounting books and ledgers and stuff like that. And that stuff can be really disconcerting for an audience that goes to a movie theater to watch something that is either like flashy and entertaining and thrilling emotionally, or even something that's like artistic and philosophical and meditative. I think this is a meditative, philosophical, intelligent movie, but it's also interested in those like day-to-day details that we usually don't associate with like high-minded literature or art. I think the germination, the seeds that I see for his other work that I really appreciated in this is like it's such a finely tuned portrait of a woman, and a woman who has specific dynamics, dynamics of distrust and anxiety and paranoia, the distrust she has and displacement she feels with job security, with relationship security, and like not exactly in like a millennial way, not like oh, I don't know who my next boyfriend's going to be, or I don't know where I don't know if my my job is emotionally satisfying to me, but in a way that reflects similar anxieties to the movie that this is referencing, and also to Petzold's other works, like Transit specifically, that this kind of unmooredness, this feeling of being displaced and uncertain, begins to feel akin to something like death, where you're so uncertain of what footing you have, of what is a secure relationship, what is a secure job, that everything feels fatalistic as a result. Everything feels close to death, close to uncertainty, close to some sort of alien, unknown horror. So I think that's definitely something that's like reflective of the movie this takes inspiration from. Yeah, I just love the kind of the women and the characters that Petzold draws, the way that they are like a kind of a woman on the run, and the relationships, the fragile relationships they form as a result of this mental state, and seeing the ways in which they slip up or compromise or submit themselves, like her entering into this confidence scheme or trying to blackmail the CEO in that business deal, and her running from Ben into Philippe's arms, but also seeing the ways in which she manifests resolve or strength under the circumstances as well. The ways that she like finds happiness for her or comes into her own personhood more as the plot progresses, or even where the ways in which she becomes resigned or at peace with her own death. Those are such interesting edge cases of human experience that I really enjoy seeing in Christian Petzold movies. The kind of relationships and revelations of characters that are formed at the very edge cases of human experience, like what we're compelled to do under duress and what opportunities we find under duress. It's really interesting. I mean, it's true of most movies in general, but most movies are about how characters react to stimuli, obviously. But it's certainly like oppressive. It almost feels Skinner boxish, but it doesn't feel that like cold and inhumane. But the kind of really, really tight corner that these characters are pushed into, and the manifestations of character that they display under those circumstances. And yeah, so for stuff that I like about Petzold, like, I don't love Undine, but I like the comparisons that this has with Undine. I like the kind of the filmic style of quietness that this evokes, the very particular style of Petzold liking empty spaces and the very small sounds that are emitted from empty spaces. I really loved Nina Hoss's performance in this, and it's not even like blowing me out of the water good, but her partnership with Petzold bears such striking fruit as we continue on. Their kind of knowledge and familiarity with each other makes for such interesting narratives, and it's cool to see that glimmer in this, that initial kind of dance that they're beginning to have with each other. And yeah, it's just a really, really fine partnership. A lot of like naughty, weird, interesting, intimate things that come out of this partnership. I really love it. It's filmmaking gold, and there's even things to find in this early iteration of it. Yeah, that was Yella. Let me know what you think. Have you seen the Yella? You should give it a watch. I really, really recommend you watch Christian Petzold's movies, especially his collaborations with Haas. I think his collaborations with Franz Rogowski are okay too. I find something like specifically incredibly intimate and personal about his working partnership with Nina Hoss. I think this is really interesting companion piece with Undine. I think you get a lot of interesting connections watching the two in concert with each other. Obviously, you can watch this with the movie that inspired it. That's a good look. And yeah, that was Yella. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe for more old, obscure, and art house films. And until next time, keep watching good movies.